Hello, 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 and welcome to our show. This is Mable, your princess of poetry and praise, and we are so thankful that you are joining us today with our TV show, Conversations with Mable. Conversations with Mable is sponsored by Amen Communications, Inc. And this is the name and the nonprofit that God told us to do. When a saint called me up at 3 o'clock in the morning and said, I've been praying and God told me to tell you to write the vision and make it plain. Write the vision and make it plain. And that's what we've been doing. We've been writing the vision to make it plain, and we've been giving dollars to scholars in order to help people who are going to school get their degree or get a training program or get into an apprenticeship or get into some type of special accreditation program so they can follow their destiny and fulfill their purpose in life. And God told me to write the vision and make it plain. And that's what we've tried to do with this first book, Faith Over Fear, Bishop Charles Harrison Mason and the Church of God in Christ. And then with this second book, 38126 King's Kids, Nobody Said We Were Poor. And then we do fundraisers in order to get dollars for scholars to help folks fulfill their mission, fulfill their purpose, try to get to their destiny and do what God has given them to do, to utilize their skills and talents to make our world and our community a better place to live, work, and play. So today on Conversations with Mable, we said, let's talk about somebody in the Bible who followed what God told them to do. And the first thing I thought about as I walked around the house was I saw this plate that I had bought. Look at this plate. I bet all of you all out there know exactly what this story is about. Noah's Ark. Noah's Ark. And you'll see so many of the animals that we see at the Natural Science Center and at the North Carolina Zoological Park and at the North Carolina Aquarium. All of these different critters and creatures, they were on the ark. And Noah wasn't really a construction engineer. Noah wasn't really a builder. Noah was just an ordinary person. Ordinary people do extraordinary things when they do what God asked them to do. And you know what happened in this particular story? Noah followed God's instructions to a T, did exactly what he told them to do. And guess what happened? All of these critters and creatures and Noah's family were saved when the big flood came. And the other people who had been laughing at him, I bet they were scrambling trying to get on that ark when they saw how everything was getting washed away. So maybe we'll talk more about Noah and the ark at a later time. But I kept walking around the house and I was munching on these goldfish because the grandkids just love these things and I do too. But then I saw this and I said, this is it, this is it, this is it. Because this is the time of the year that we really focus on Jesus's resurrection. And this fish was used by Jesus to explain the sign of Jonah. A fish was used as the sign of Jonah, and the fish is symbolic of Jesus's resurrection. And you know what Jesus's resurrection is all about. That's what just strengthens and forms the whole foundation and the basis of our faith as Christians, as believers. So let's look in Matthew and see what was Jesus talking about when he said the fish is the sign of Jonah. In Matthew 12:38 through 40, we find that some scribes and Pharisees asked Jesus, "Teacher, we want to see a sign from you." And Jesus told them, "An evil and adulterous generation seeks for a sign, but no sign will be given to it except the sign of the prophet Jonah. For just as Jonah was 3 days, y'all get it? Jonah was 3 days and 3 nights in the belly of the great fish, so will the Son of Man be 3 days and 3 nights in the heart of the earth." And this is beautiful because it illustrates how Jesus is connecting the Old Testament with the New Testament, because the story of Jonah being in the fish was in the Old Testament, but Jesus talks about the fish and the sign of Jonah in the New Testament. So the Old Testament really kind of foreshadows and lets us know way ahead of time what's going to happen in the future. And then in the New Testament, you see so much of what had been discussed in the Old Testament. So in the Old Testament, as we look at Jonah, what do we find? And this is a story we all heard as little kids growing up in the little workers class, in the Sunshine Band, where our teachers told us about Jonah. And Jonah was a prophet. Jonah was a good man. Jonah loved the Lord. Jonah listened to God. Jonah prayed and he communicated. And that's why he heard from God and he knew what God was wanting him to do. And God spoke to Jonah and told Jonah, "I want you to get up and I want you to go to Nineveh and I want you to cry against them and all the wicked stuff that they have been doing," because these were some bad folks. I mean, you think Sodom and Gomorrah was bad. These folks were doing anything you can think about that's evil and bad and just, woo-wee, yucky, yucky. They were doing it in Nineveh. And that's why God wanted Jonah to go to Nineveh to preach and tell the folks, y'all better get y'all act right. Well, God told Jonah to go this away and preach to the folks in Nineveh. But what did Jonah do? Jonah got him a ticket and went that away and got on a ship going to Tarshish, as far away as he could get from Nineveh. And guess what God did? Y'all know God is always doing something. God sent a great wind and a storm came, and guess what? Guess who was in the ship? Jonah was in the ship. He was in the ship at first. And the ship was about to just be broken and torn apart. And the people that were on the ship were mariners, and these were shipmen and sea experts. These people knew what to do. And they said, "Look, as bad as this storm is, what we need to do, even though we're carrying a whole bunch of important, expensive cargo, we better throw some of this stuff off this boat to see if this will help us to survive." So they just threw all of the expensive cargo off the ship. And the storm kept on raging and the boat kept on rocking. It looked like it was about to just fall to pieces like splinters. And the mariners got scared and they started telling everybody, "Get on your knees and pray to your God." They all got on their knees and prayed to their little bitty gods, the little gods. And guess what? The storm kept right on beating down on them. And where was our main character? Where was the protagonist of this story? Jonah was down in the bottom of the ship. And guess what he was doing? Jonah was sleeping good like a baby. And the people were praying, and the folks were just doing all they could do to talk and pray and beg their God to please stop the storm. And the shipmaster was going all through the ship trying to make sure everybody was praying, and they were getting ready to cast lots and everything. And he ran up on Jonah down there sleeping. He said, "Wake up, man, wake up, get up. Wait. We got to figure out what's going on and why this ship is rocking and rolling and this storm is tearing up our ship and we had to throw over the cargo." He said, "Who are you and where you from and who your people?" Remember how your folks used to always say that when company came over to your house? The first thing they say is, "Who your people?" Well, the shipmaster asked Jonah, "Who your people? Who are you?" And remember, Jonah was a prophet, so homeboy had to be right. And he got honest and he said, "I'm a Hebrew. I fear the Lord. I believe in the God of heaven and earth. And I believe that my God made the land and the sea." And boy, when he said that, the shipmaster said, wait a minute. If your God made the sea and the dry land and everything, maybe you can help us to get this storm. So he said, come on come on. We're going up to the top where all of my folks up there praying. And Jonah realized, wow, these folks are scared. They don't know what's going to happen. And I know why all this is probably happening, because the Lord is mad at me. So Jonah told him, just throw me overboard. Just throw me overboard, and maybe that will help. And the men looked at Jonah, and after they figured out that Jonah's God was the God over the land and the God over the sea, then they said, hey, we better pray to Jonah's God. And they said, and we're going to ask Jonah's God. Now, he said he wants us to throw him overboard, but if we throw him overboard, don't get us for throwing this innocent man over, but we're going to throw him overboard like he told us to. But they feared God. They were scared. They were scared of the big God, the God that Jonah loved, the God that Jonah knew he had not done what he was supposed to do. And they threw Jonah overboard. As soon as they threw homeboy overboard, guess what happened? The winds and the waves obeyed God's will, and there was peace, peace, peace. And the shipmaster and the mariners and all the men on their little ship were able to go on where they were going. But Jonah went overboard. And what happened to Jonah, y'all? That's where the big fish comes into play. Jonah is swallowed by a huge, humongous fish. And he's in the belly of the fish. How long? 3 days, 3 nights. I'm going to tell you, that blew Jonah's mind. And he realized, hey, the God I serve he's bad. He don't play. He started praying. He started giving thanks to God. He started saying, Lord, I'm in your holy temple. Please, God, help me, Lord. I love you, Lord. God of my fathers, oh my God of my mothers, God of everybody. He got on his knees. He started praying. He said, Lord, help me. Lord, please, Jesus, I didn't mean to do what I did. If you give me another chance, I done been through all of this water and all this storms, and the seaweeds were all around my neck, and I didn't know what was going to happen. I had fainted if it hadn't have been for you. I would have died if it hadn't have been for you. God, I raised my hands up and I said, Lord, I'm going to act better. Jonah was saying everything that we often say when we don't do what God has told us to do. Jonah was a scared dude. Jonah didn't know what to do but say, Lord, I give you thanks. Lord, I'm coming to you with my all in all. I surrender all. all to you, Lord, all to you. I surrender. I surrender. I give up my all. You my everything. Oh, Lord, help me, help me, help me, help me. Oh, God, I need you to save me. And the Lord spoke to the fish, and the fish vomited Jonah out on dry land. The fish vomited Jonah on dry land. Can you imagine Jonah getting out of that fish and vomit all? Oh, yuck. Oh, You talking about yucky, yucky, yucky. So then what does Jonah do? After all that vomiting stuff, Jonah couldn't do nothing but say, hey, it's time for me to, I think I need to listen. And so here comes God again. And the second time, God says, Jonah, I want you to go to Nineveh, and I want you to preach and tell them they are wicked. They've been doing a whole bunch of bad stuff. They just real criminals. They done broke every rule that you can think about, every commandment, every law. But I want you to cry and tell them that the Lord is not satisfied. And if they don't get their act right, Nineveh will be destroyed and overthrown in 40 days. God, he just put it out there. And guess what happened? Jonah went to Nineveh and he let the folks know, thus saith the Lord. Y'all know y'all have broken every rule, commandment, and law. Y'all are wicked people. And God said, if y'all don't get y'all act right, in 40 days, your whole city, your everything you built will be destroyed, will be overthrown. This is it. My God said, this is it. And the beauty of the story is Jonah's little short revival turned everything around. People in Nineveh said, hey, we're going to have to get our act right. Everybody started fasting. Everybody started putting on sackcloth. Everybody started sitting in ashes. The king, they sent out decrees. They proclaimed the fast. They put on the sackcloth. They sat in the ashes. And everybody in Nineveh got on their knees, said, we're not going to drink nothing. We're not going to eat anything. We're not going to taste anything. We're going to act right. And we're going to tell God, please don't destroy us in 40 days. We promise we're going to act right. We're going to turn from our evil way. We're going to turn from our violence. We're going to turn from all the crazy stuff we've been doing. God saw how the people in Nineveh were trying to act right and that they were repenting. And what did God do? What did God do? God gave them a second chance. God gave them a second chance. God is a God of a second chance. And so as we look at destiny and look at our purpose and look at why God has brought us here on earth and why God wants you, and me, it's because, like my friend Noah, and like my friend Jonah, God has given each of us a specific task and a specific job and a specific thing that only we can do. And I know sometimes we might think, well, I just don't know if I can fulfill what God has asked me to do. But the next time you are praying and God puts something on your heart or your mind or your soul to do, I want you to realize that Noah did what he was supposed to do and looked how he saved his family and all the critters and creatures. Jonah didn't do what he was supposed to do, like many of us. But eventually, after being swallowed whole and staying in the big fish for 3 days and 3 nights and then being vomited out. Hey, you talking about going through some turmoil. Homeboy went through. This Jonah story is for all of us to realize that God needs us. This Jonah story is relevant, especially now during Lent season, leading up to Good Friday, Easter, and Resurrection. Jonah spent money and time running from God. He went on a laborious journey to the other opposite end of the earth so he wouldn't go this away to Nineveh, but he went that away on the boat. And you see what happened. What we learn from Jonah being in the fish for 3 days and 3 nights is that, y'all, we can't run from God. We can't run from God. We can't play hide and seek from God. We can't think that we can just, do what we want to do and act like we don't hear and we don't understand what God is trying to tell us to do. We can't run from the presence of God. Jonah should have realized that wherever you go, the Spirit of God is going to be there. You can't flee from his presence. Jonah attempted suicide by just saying, hey, y'all, throw me overboard. And how many times have we just thrown our lives into perilous situations because we were trying to do what we wanted to do? And we didn't understand that the fury of God will always catch up with you. He will always be there to get you and to reel you back in, because we must fear God and we must listen to God and we must respect God and we must understand that it was he that has made us and not we ourselves. We are his people and the sheep of his pastures. God made us. God created us. Therefore, we owe it to God to do what he has asked us to do, because when we don't, what's going to happen? We're going to end up in a whole bunch of trouble, Jonah was a reluctant prophet, and he resisted the call of the Lord to speak to the Gentiles. He did not want to go and talk to some folks who were not like him. He did not want to do what God told him to do. He was reluctant. He was resistant. He was retiring. He was restrained. He was scared. He was afraid. He didn't want to do right. He was hesitant. He was timid. He was shrinking. He was just scared, shaking in his boot. But how many of us do we ever feel the way Jonah felt in that fish? How many of us do we feel like Jonah? Have you ever turned away from an assignment from God? Did you tell God you weren't ready? Have you ever put God on hold? Did you tell God you didn't have the resources? Did you say, God, that ain't me? Did you say, God, I can't even do that? Has God commissioned you? Did God speak to you? Did God tell you to do something and you failed to do it like Jonah? I'm holding on to this fish because I want you to remember what Jesus was talking about, the sign of Jonah. 3 days and 3 nights in the belly of the fish, and the Son of Man, 3 days and 3 nights in the earth, and then his resurrection. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, God sends various things to illustrate and to show what we need to do, where we need to go, and where He wants us to be. I think sometimes because we have all of this education, we think that we are smarter than God. And we think that we know the answer when He's the one who made the questions and the answers. You can't hurry God. You can't outsmart God. You can't box with God. You can't challenge God. You can't run from God. You can't outwit God. You can't think you're bigger than God. You can't think that God is not going to catch up with whatever you have failed to do. Eventually, God is going to make sure that you listen to His will. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, let's all say during this special resurrection time, have thine own way, Lord. Have thine own way. Thou art the potter. I am the clay. Mold me and make me after thy will. While I am waiting, yielded and still. May the love of God bring this fish to our mind the next time God gives you a special assignment. Do His will. Just do what He says. You'll be happy every step of the way. God bless you. I love you. Remember, resurrection, 3 days and 3 nights.